And we begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdata min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidna ilma. All right, so we did the last session we did hadith number 34, and that was about forbidding the evil. Is part of Iman, basically. That we are told to forbid the evil, and there are 3 stages to it. That's what we saw. And so the wisdom behind it is that all of us, at one stage or another, are supposed to forbid the evil. And so you have, in the explanation, however, it's not to be done any kind of way. We don't take justice into our own hands. When it says, like, change it with your hand, this is for the one who is in control, the ruler, the leader. It could be even a parent in her household, right? Like a mother in her household, because she has control over that area, right? But this is for really the leader to do. And we saw that changing something with the tongue is really for the preachers to do, because why? They have the knowledge, and so they will be able to advise based on knowledge, basically. And then the 3rd stage is to hate it in our heart, and that is the weakest of them. And so that's for everybody. You know, that's the very least that we could do as a believer, is to hate it in our heart, very least, right? But like I said in the group, I was giving the example of like books and planners. Like I ordered this planner, and this planner at the beginning, like I really like the way it's put together. But at the beginning of the planner, the one who did the planner started saying how she was queer and all of these things, which has nothing to do with the planner in the first place. I did not need, this was TMI for me. I did not need to know her sexual orientation. And so, but what that made me do, though, is stop buying from her, right? This is the best way that I can change it. I hate it in my heart, but I also have that control of not purchasing from that, right? So that is what we did. That's what I was giving as an example last time in the group. Or the other book that I bought, an audio book. It was about habits. And so the author is going about habits, and then in the middle of all this whole thing, he's saying how, you know, he did this thing with his partner, trying to build this habit with his partner. He wanted to please his partner. And again, I didn't have to know this. So once I found out, I just didn't feel comfortable, you know, being a customer, or, you know, I have returned the book and I stopped, you know, listening to it. So this is like, the least that we can do is whatever you can do in your hands, but we don't really take justice into our own hands. That's what I'm trying to say. This hadith, the explanation of it teaches us that. But if you just read the hadith without explanation, then you're going to think, oh, I can just take things into our own hands. And this is what happened. I remember in France at one point, you know, like there were these groups of Muslims that were like, if they see a woman without hijab, you know, they would or if they see a woman with hijab, they will pull it out. Because why? They were coming from a country where they had, you know, hijab became like synonymous of oppression at one point because of their own history, right? And so anyway, this was them like, just, you don't do that, you know. If anybody, you can't see somebody with hijab or without hijab and just like either put the veil on them or take it out of, you know, like you can't do something like that. You can advise them, but what I'm trying to say is that we need to look at the explanation of a hadith, because sometimes just the hadith itself is not enough for us to really understand how to implement it. All right, so today hadith number 35 is about brotherhood and sisterhood. So this is pretty beautiful, because I love everything about sisterhood. Alhamdulillah. So, Bismillah. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم لا تحاسدوا ولا تناجشوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا ولا يبيع بعضكم على بيع بعض وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا المسلم أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يخذله ولا يكذبه ولا يحقره التقوى هاهنا ويشير إلى صدره 3 مرات بحسب امرئ من الشر أن يحقر أخاه المسلم كل المسلم على المسلم حرام دمه وماله وعرضه رواه مسلم. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, do not have envy of one another. Do not inflate prices on one another. Do not hate one another. Do not turn your backs on one another. Do not undersell one another, but rather be worshippers of Allah and brothers. The Muslim is the brother of his fellow Muslim. He does not oppress him, nor does he abandon him, nor does he lie to him, nor does he belittle him. Taqwa is here, and he pointed to his chest 3 times. It is a sufficient act of evil that a person belittles his Muslim brother. Every Muslim to another Muslim is sacred. So here the term haram is actually, it means sacred, right? Sacred. His blood, his wealth, and his honor. And this hadith is related by Muslim. And let's look at the explanation. So the first one is about envy. La tahasadu. You know, hasad. This is a prohibition of having hasad. It is haram for us to have hasad for one another. So the Sheikh says hasad, envy, is to dislike that which Allah has blessed your brother or sister with from blessings in deen or in dunya. Meaning you don't like it. You don't like it that they have it. You know, so that is hasad. Regardless of whether you desire for that blessing to cease or not. So even if you don't, it doesn't matter if you want the blessing to stop or not, but the fact that you dislike the fact that they have it, that's hasad, okay? And it could be deen or it could be dunya. You dislike the fact that maybe, I don't know, they started reading Qur'an, and maybe you're still in the white book, and you dislike that. You dislike the fact that they're in Qur'an and you're not, right? Or you dislike the fact that they just bought a car, cash, right? You dislike that. You dislike that fact. So that's hasad, the fact that you dislike what Allah has blessed them with. You're not comfortable with that, right? And so here it says, whenever you dislike that which Allah has given your brother or sister of blessing, this is hasad. It's you questioning Allah, basically, right? Because Allah is the one who gave it. So he's saying, وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا, do not inflate prices on one another. The scholars have said that inflating prices is to increase the price of an item publicly without wanting to buy it and only desiring to benefit the seller or to harm the buyer. So for instance, let's say I come to the store. Okay, so there are 3 of us now. So let's say I come to the store of Amina, and Juma is trying to buy this beautiful abaya from Amina, and the abaya costs maybe $50, and I will come and say, oh, Amina, I'll buy it from you for $70, right? I don't intend to buy the abaya. I'm only doing that so that Juma will be like, okay, I'll take it for $70 because she really wants it. And so now I've just helped Amina inflate the price. I don't have any intention of buying, right? So this is from the buyer's perspective. But now the seller's perspective is, for instance, or harm the buyer. Oh yeah, that's it. That's actually the example. So you want to benefit the seller, and you want to harm the buyer. So basically, I want to help Amina out, and I'm inflating the price. But what is that? What is that doing? Is actually harming Juma, for instance, because she, she had a budget of $50 and she had planned to pay for 50, but I came and say, oh no, I'm ready to spend for this particular abaya. I'm ready to spend $70. So this is not halal for us to do. Okay. So wala tanajashu. Wala tabaghadu. Do not hate one another. Hatred is to dislike and detest, meaning do not dislike and detest one another. So now this one, subhanAllah, imagine somebody really harmed you. I was reflecting on that and I was like, wow. And even not just that, but I was reflecting on even like between spouses, like when some spouses divorce, like there's pure hatred there, right? Sometimes. And people forget that they are Muslims at the end of the day, right? So everything needs to be balanced. You may hate what the person is doing, but you should not hate the person actually. So that takes iman, that takes faith actually. So the saying "wala tadabaru," do not turn your backs on one another, right? Do not abandon one another. And also it says that it is that people turn their backs on one another so that they do not face each other. And honestly, I have done it. Like, I know, like, if I didn't want to speak to a sister and she comes into the masjid, I would just like turn a little bit so that she doesn't see me. I know I've done this. So, subhanAllah. So it's, it's definitely for me to check myself. Alhamdulillah for knowledge. So do not turn your backs on one another. It is that people turn their backs on one another so that they do not face each other. He's saying, wala, okay, this one is, wala yabi' ba'dukum ala bay'i ba'd. Do not undersell one another. And here the meaning is that one does not undercut the sale of his brother. For example, a person buys an item for 10 riyals or dollars, etc. Thereafter, another person comes to him and says, I will sell it to you for less. This is because it causes enmity and hatred amongst the people. So this is another scenario. Let's say that, I have a shop and Amina has a shop. And so Juma wants to buy from Amina, and then I'm coming to Juma and say, I'll sell it to you for less. Right? Like I'm cutting into Amina's business. So do not undercut the sale of your brother. وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, but rather be worshippers of Allah and brothers, or sisters. And worshippers of Allah, ibad Allah, right? Be brothers, meaning be brothers in love for one another. I'm just going to say sisters, it applies to us as well. So be sisters in love for one another, companionship, not being enemies to one another. Thereafter, Rasulullah ﷺ emphasized the brotherhood with his saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-Muslimu akhul Muslim, right? The Muslim is the brother of his fellow Muslim. This is due to the connection between them, which is Islam. It is the strongest of ties among the Muslimin. And I have witnessed this, with our dear sister Latifa. I mean, like I said, sometimes we will be sitting and reflecting on that and said, okay, we don't have the same family. We didn't grow up in the same country. We don't have we didn't have anything in common, really, except Islam, right? Except Islam. I've never been to Nigeria. I don't know what her tribe is about. I don't speak her language. Only Islam tied us together so much so that, for us, she was our sister. And she had blood sisters in Nigeria, and she told us, you guys are my sisters. Subhanallah. And it was a really good lesson of that for me, basically, right? It was a really good lesson for that for me. And I pray that really the sisters that I am for you, I pray that we treat each other like sisters, that we love each other like sisters. And alhamdulillah, we come from different places, and that makes me really happy. So, al-Muslimu akhul Muslim, the Muslim is the brother of his fellow Muslim. The strongest of ties among the Muslimin is Islam. La yadlimu, he does not oppress him, right? So a Muslimah, she's not supposed to oppress a Muslim, another person, another Muslim. It means here that the Muslim does not act hostile towards another one. وَلَا يَخْذُلُهُ, nor does he abandon him at a time when he loves to be assisted. You know, subhanallah. Yeah, that makes us better. Because, you know, definitely we've been in situations where we were going through difficulties, and that's when you see people abandoning you, not checking on you, not, you know, not even trying to figure out, can you eat? Do you have something to eat? You know, just complete silence, and yeah, that makes us better. So we're not supposed to abandon each other, especially when the person needs assistance. وَلَا يَكْذِبُهُ, nor does he lie to him, right? He does not tell him of an account that is a lie. So we have to be careful that we don't. So this bond that we have, this bond of Islam, it is really sacred. Actually, that's the lesson that we get from this hadith, is that the bond that is uniting us is a sacred bond. And so because of that, like, even when you meet your brother or sister in Islam, it's like, okay, I should not oppress her. I should not lie to her. I should not cut her off. I should not turn my back on her. I should not envy, you know, like dislike what blessings that Allah has blessed her with. She's my sister, right? That's the perspective that we should have. And then it says here, وَلَا يَحْقِرُ, I should not belittle her. I should not put her down or think I'm better than her or make fun of her, right? And then Rasulullah then said, At-taqwa ha-huna. Taqwa is here. And he pointed to his chest 3 times, right? So here, the place of the taqwa of Allah is the heart, basically. Therefore, when the heart has taqwa, the rest of the limbs, they're going to have taqwa. It starts with the heart, right? If your heart is sick, everything else is going to be sick. But if your heart is sound and upon iman, then that is also going to be shown in everything else that you do, and in your limbs, and in your tongue, and in your actions. And it says that the Prophet ﷺ pointed to his chest 3 times, so that he said, taqwa is here, taqwa is here, taqwa is here. So he really emphasized that point. You know, taqwa is not in what you see, right? It really is not in what you see. It is in the heart. It starts with the heart. And nobody knows that except Allah, because I can't go into anybody's heart and say, oh, they have taqwa. We don't know that. We can pray and hope that they have taqwa, but we don't know for sure. Allah knows, right? But usually taqwa starts from the heart and it's reflected in the limbs, right? Okay, so he then said, بِحَسْبِ إِمْرِئٍ مِّنَ الشَّرِّ أَن يَحْقِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. It is a sufficient act of evil that a person belittles his Muslim brother. And then the meaning of that is, if there was nothing from evil except belittling your Muslim brother, that would be sufficient. If there was no other evil, and we did al-kaba'ir, right? We did all the major sins. So if there was nothing evil, then this as an evil would be sufficient, right? SubhanAllah. And then, كُلُّ الْمُسْلِمِ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِ haram, meaning sacred here. And so damuhu is the blood. So every Muslim to another Muslim is sacred. That means his blood. وَمَالُهُ, his wealth. وَعِرْضُهُ, and his honor. So it is not permissible to antagonize him by way of killing him or anything less than that. That's for the blood. And as for the wealth, he does not aggress against him by way of robbing, stealing, renouncing, or anything else. And irduhu, his honor, it means that his reputation and stature. Thus, it is not permissible to backbite him so that he disgraces his honor. So let's look at some of the benefits from this hadith. From the benefits of the hadith is the prohibition of hasad, of envy. This prohibition is due to its impermissibility, and hasad has many harms. From them, it is despising and disliking the qadr of Allah. right? The divine decree of Allah. It is enmity for your brother. It also obligates the heart of the envier to have grief and sorrow, because you're not at peace. If you have hasad, you're not at peace, right? Therefore, every time that the blessing is increased, the grief and sorrow is increased, making his life more miserable. The person who's having hasad, because he has no control over the blessings. We don't have control over how Allah blesses a person. Absolutely no control. Absolutely no control. SubhanAllah. There was one person who told Imam about this opportunity at the masjid in New York, right? And the person lives in New York. So he just told Imam, oh, this masjid, they're looking for an Imam in case you want to come to a Jummah and see. And so Imam was like, okay. So he came and did Jummah. The person who told him that, somebody, I think it was in a cab driver told him about it. So he's never been to the masjid. He doesn't know the masjid at all. And so he just heard it from that cab driver, and he told Imam. So when Imam finally came and did the Jummah, and then they liked him, and then they did a contract with him and they kept him, he came to visit Imam. And so he was just looking at the place. He said, ah! He just kept looking. He looked and he said, so if I had known, and he said it, he couldn't control it, right? So he said, I didn't know this was all this, right? So the point is this: Allah used him to bless, Imam Ahmed, but it's like, it's not, he himself never visited the place, never knew the place. He was just like, Allah just used him as like a messenger, right? He just passed on the message. But then he was so shocked that he opened his mouth to say, had I known. You know what I mean? And Imam was like, okay, what do you mean, had you known? So the point I'm trying to make here is that this is a blessing that only is decreed by Allah Azza wa Jalla, and He will use people to bless you. Like, you have absolutely no control. Like, sometimes your enemies will be used to benefit you, and you have absolutely no control over that. But if you have hasad in your heart, it's just going to make you miserable, because you don't have control of increasing that blessing. You have absolutely no control. You may think you do. You may plot and do all of these things. Like, look at Fir'aun plotting to kill, Bani Israel. He was killing all the baby boys, thinking that will help him, kill his enemy. But he ended up raising his worst enemy, Musa alayhi salam, in his palace, feeding him and clothing him in the best of conditions in the palace. He raised him like a son, right? And why was he killing the others? Because he thought that was the best way for him to not have his enemy. That was the best way to block, that enmity. And then Allah used, subhanAllah, it's such a huge example of how we cannot stop the qadr of Allah, and we cannot stop the blessings of Allah, right? And Allah can use anyone that He wants to use to bless you. So having hasad is pointless, but if it does happen, then just ask Allah to aid you to take it out of your heart, and make dua for the person. Keep making dua for the person you're having hasad for. Just keep increasing. As soon as you have that ill feeling, just say, Ya Allah, increase them even in more, right? That will help with that feeling of hasad. That's what the scholars say. The prohibition, the other benefit we get is the prohibition of inflating prices. And that is due to the enmity that it causes, is due to it being a reason for hatred, and a reason for the things that cause hatred, right? Thus, it is not permissible for people to hate their brother, nor is it permissible for them to do those things that cause hatred. From the benefits of the hadith, the prohibition of turning backs on one another. It is to turn your back on your brother, not taking from him, not listening to him, and this is due to it being the opposite of the brotherhood that is based on Iman, which is correct faith. From the benefits of the hadith is the prohibition of selling over the sale of a Muslim. And likewise is haram to buy over his purchase, and also to propose to a woman over another. So meaning a brother proposed to sister A, and then let's say a brother B proposed to sister A, and then brother C is like, I want to propose to you as well, right? Knowing, well, if he didn't know, he didn't know, but knowing that she already has a proposal, right? So this is not allowed. Proposing to a woman over a brother's proposal, leasing over his lease, and anything in addition to his rights. So from the benefits of the hadith, the obligation of ascribing to brotherhood based upon correct faith, okay? Due to his saying, be worshippers of Allah and brothers. From the benefits of this hadith, the clarification of how the Muslim should interact with his brother. He does not oppress him, he doesn't forsake him, he doesn't lie to him, he doesn't belittle him, because all of this will negate the brotherhood that is based upon iman, upon correct faith. From the benefit of this hadith is the place that taqwa, the fear of Allah, is the heart. That's where it is. That's where it resides. Therefore, when the heart has fear of Allah, the limbs have fear of Allah. One should know the statement of some when they commit a sin and they are reprimanded and rebuked. They say, oh, taqwa is here. So, okay, this is not something like, some people, let's say, for instance, I don't know, maybe they were drinking alcohol. And then you're like, wait a minute, that's not right. And it's like, no, taqwa is in the heart. And so that's not correct either. Because he says this is a truthful word. Yes, taqwa is in the heart, but they desire falsehood with it. They're using it in the wrong way. They're committing haram, and then when you talk to them, they're like, oh, but taqwa is in the heart, right? So he says the response to this is that we say if there was taqwa in your heart, if there was taqwa there, then your limbs would also have taqwa, fear of Allah. So meaning it has to go hand in hand, and especially even if you have taqwa and then you disobey and you commit haram. But if you really have taqwa, when you are advised, then you will feel bad about it. You will feel sorry. You'll feel repentance and remorse, and you're not going to use this to say, oh, taqwa is in the heart, so leave me alone, that kind of thing. No, that is actually a sign of the opposite. Okay, and then he quotes a hadith here that says, surely there is a morsel of flesh that is, if it is correct, then the whole of the body is correct. And if it is corrupt, then the whole of the body is corrupt, and that is the heart. Okay, we have 2 pages left. Let's see. The great evil of belittling a Muslim. So some of the benefits from this hadith is not to belittle Muslim. And another benefit is, let's see, of this hadith is the sanctity, the sacredness of the blood, the wealth, and honor of a Muslim. And he says, so he quotes Surah Shu'ara, ayah 42. No, not Shu'ara, Surah Shura, I think. Yeah, Surah Shura, ayah 42. The way of blame, translation is, the way of blame is only against those who oppress men and rebel in the earth without justification. For such, there will be a painful torment. And ayah 41 in the same surah, and indeed whosoever takes revenge after he has suffered wrong, for such there is no way of blame against them. So basically these 2 ayat are telling us that there are conditions, like, if you're being wrong, you have the right to defend yourself, even if that results in blood being spilled, right? So when we say that your brother's blood is sacred, that's, there are conditions in which there are circumstances in which the spilling of that blood will be allowed, and that is if, for instance, you've been wronged, and so you're correcting a wrong, and that's the same thing with the honor. Like, let's say somebody dishonored you and you want to defend your honor, then you could say, no, you cannot say that about me. Right? You basically, when you're trying to find your rights, then some of these things will be allowed. So ayah in 41 and 42 is what the Sheikh quotes as like exceptions, right? So that's why he says, but there are reasons that will cause this to change, right? The origin is that the sanctity of the blood, wealth, and honor, but there are reasons that would cause this to change. And so the final benefit is, he says, if the Islamic Ummah were to turn to these guidelines, it will be given bliss and fortune in this life and the hereafter. This is because all of it is magnificent, lofty, and superior manners that cause rectification and reform and puts a halt to corruption. And that is so true. So the dua we need to make really is that as a ummah, we need to implement this hadith because it is not really implemented, right? May Allah make us better Muslims, better believers. Do I have any questions or comments? There we go. No? Okay. All right, sisters. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Trivia questions following shortly in the group. Bi-idhnillah. Assalamu alaikum.